there, nestled against his pulse, by Huthan. Chapter 8.
Anyone hear me? Shiro. Keith? Everything okay with the door? Keith, come in! Keith! Hey, Pidge, the comms are acting up. Surgeon's dying, Shiro. Hold on, kiddo, you keep cutting out. I can't hear you. So much blood. I can't. Are you hurt? Are you hurt? Keith! Princess, something's happened to Keith and Lance. We need to call off the meeting. Keith, you're out of range. Are you still at the palace? Keith! Keith, if you can hear us, we're coming for you. Hang in there. Lance? Lance? Is he with you? He's not answering his comms. Keith, are you there? They heard him, Shiro.
I'm going to kill them.
Hey.
The word is subdued, spoken in the softest tone that Keith's ever heard Shiro use. It still echoes around the room. Keith doesn't look up, eyes fixed on his dagger. He's seated on the steps beside Lance's pod, a clean rag in his hand and a bottle of polishing liquid on the floor by his hip. Haran gave it to him 2 hours ago, along with a plate of food. The bottle is 2/3 empty, the plate untouched. His right hand guides the rag over the edge of the blade, the slate gray and black metal gleaming. He can see his reflection in it. Can see Shiro looking at him too. How are you holding up? Shiro asks. The muscles in Keith's arm have been protesting for a while now, stuck dragging this soaked-through rag in the same motions since he first sat down. His bicep twitches and his deltoid burns hot, but he ignores it, much in the same way he ignores Shiro's question. It's a stupid question. Shiro leans his elbows on his knees and links his fingers together. He tries to catch Keith's eyes, but Keith just ducks behind his hair. You know he'll be fine, right? We got him into the pod in time. Karan says he'll be out in another 12 hours. Keith just flips his knife over. It shines brighter than it ever has, but he still wipes it down. The metal glints, and he angles it back and forth, letting it flash into his eyes. Again, Shiro tries. We're all really worried. Not just for Lance, but for you too. When Keith still doesn't reply, he drops the soft approach and grasps Keith's shoulder firm. Keith, you haven't slept in 2 days. Look, Pidge and Hunk have been going over the security footage. We'll find the rest of the insurgents soon. I know you want to act, but you need to rest first. I'll rest when we find them. Keith thinks it seems like too much energy to say aloud. His mind feels dull, but strangely, electricity thrums through his veins. He can't bring himself to reach over to the plate next to him, can't make himself eat the food, but he can't stop polishing his knife either. He feels stuck, not starting but not stopping, all at the same time. Shiro is silent. Keith can't see his expression with his head down like this, but he imagines it might be that typical worried look. He wonders if Shiro will leave now. He's not sure if that'll make him feel better. And then, with an oddly relaxed tone, Shiro says, I understand that you care a lot about Lance, but locking down the north wing of the palace wasn't the way to go. Threatening violence against the insurgents wasn't your place either. That's the responsibility of the Endian authorities. You gave the Endian Council a lot of grief. Keith glances in Shiro's direction, not that he can see him behind his hair, but something about that tone niggles at the back of his head. They deserved it, he says. They knew the spies were there. They suspected, Shiro said dismissively. That gets Keith to raise his head, and he frowns. It's not like the council planted the insurgents there themselves, Shiro continues. You can't blame them for something like that. Keith stares, feeling a twist in his stomach where there was previously just cold. What? Shiro spares him a glance out of the corner of his eye. Don't misunderstand.
Seeing Lance get hurt so badly got to all of us too, but you couldn't control your emotions, and it affected the mission. We've been over this. Your temper... My temper!
Keith interrupts. He thinks he's heard enough.
Lance could have died in the crossfire of their stupid disagreement. Do you know what they're fighting over? A piece of land in the middle of shit creek nowhere. Tell me how I'm not supposed to be mad about that. It's a vital resource.
Keith barks a laugh, disbelieving.
No, it's not. It's a border dispute between the West faction and the South. The government favored the South, so the West got angry. The tour guide had plenty to say about that right before she attacked us.
His jaw clenches, recalling the look in her eyes. Indifferent, detached, like she couldn't care less about trying to take life if it meant bragging rights.
We were just pawns, she said. Useless outsiders that the West was going to use for petty revenge against their government. And so what if the council only had suspicions? Why didn't they have the decency to warn us at the very least?
The council said that they had a plan to catch the insurgents, Shiro says, and this was their only chance. But they didn't know if we would go along with it, and they didn't want to risk revealing things to outsiders in case the plan was leaked. Keith, they had their reasons. A heartbeat or two. Silence. Keith has his chin tipped up, hand clenched around the hilt of his knife, but Shiro just stares back evenly. He doesn't waver, not even a little, and that tightness in Keith's gut digs its claws in further.
Reasons?
He repeats.
They had their reasons?
In one fluid movement, Keith surges to his feet with a snarl and hurtles his blade at the far wall. It slams into the metal bulkhead with a jarring clang and bounces off onto the floor, skidding to a stop by the one of the other pods. Shiro doesn't flinch. Of course. And Keith rounds on him, teeth bared. Screw their reasons. He slashes an arm through the air.
I don't care. And screw their one chance too. All that tells me is that they used us as bait then. They used Lance as bait. We could have lost him, Shiro. He could have bled out my arms. I held him, and I felt his blood soaking through my suit, and I couldn't stop it. I couldn't do anything. Keith... He was still trying to smile, the master, smiling, and...
Keith takes a step back, shaking his head.
He kept trying to reassure me, like I was the one who was dying. Keith, you want me to put a bunch of politicians' reasons above Lance's life. You want me to just accept the fact that they manipulated us.
Keith spits.
I won't. I can't. I won't do that ever. Not to any of you, and not to him.
Shiro raises his hands, placating.
I'm not saying that, kiddo. You don't get it. You don't. It's Lance. He can't die, okay? I lost Mom and Dad and you once. That's more than enough, and I can't lose him too, alright? I already have to live with knowing that my soulmate...
Keith snaps his mouth closed, but it's already too late. Shiro frowns, but his voice is gentle when he asks, Your soulmate? Keith grits his teeth. His hands are fisted, nails biting into his palms, and he turns away. He doesn't want Shiro to see. There's a slash of silver on the wall from his knife. He stares straight at it, shaking. His head is spinning. He can't tell if it's because he's angry or because he hasn't eaten in... He can't remember when the last time was. Keith, is all Shiro says. He shouldn't. His wrists burn, and he shouldn't. But there's an ache in him. Beneath the cacophony of fear, instinctive and animalistic, exists a small whispering thing that begs him to come clean, to release all of the thoughts that he's turned over his head year after year as he lay awake each night since he was a kid, as he walks to flight classes with leaden feet, as he scours the desert in the bright, unrelenting sun. All those times he's reflected on what it means to have the marks that he does. It's been eating at him. It gnaws away at his head, unspoken and festering. It goes against everything he's been doing since he was 8, but it's Shiro. It's Takashi. If he can't tell the one person he trusts implicitly, who can he tell? He shoves his hands in his hair and sits down with a thump.
My soulmate dies.
Shiro waits, and when Keith says nothing else, hesitantly says, "That happens, yes."
I'll probably end up killing them.
Keith says dully.
I'm the reason they die, and they'll blame me for it.
Shiro blinks, thrown for a second, and then he gets that look on his face, the one that says he thinks Keith is being stupid. "You can't know." With a growl, Keith yanks off his left glove.
Look at this. Read it. And tell me it's not what it sounds like.
It should be momentous, terrifying, or at least a relief to finally show someone after hiding it his entire life. All he feels, though, is tired. He bares his branded flesh to the only brother he's ever known, half in defiance, daring him to recoil, and half in resignation, watching as Shiro's face goes slack and pale. But when he looks at Keith, it's not with a mistrust Keith vaguely expected, but with genuine sorrow. It's not with condemnation, not, "How could you?" It's, "I'm sorry for your loss." It's more than Keith thinks he deserves. He stuffs his glove back on, clamping his other hand around the wrist.
This is why you hate meeting people. Talking to strangers. You don't want to meet your soulmate,
Shiro says quietly.
Keith snorts. You gonna put that in the report for Iverson?
It's uncalled for, but of course Shiro doesn't rise to the bait. His eyes are on the walls, a hand over his mouth, and eyes distant. He doesn't react, just waits, and Keith slumps, elbows resting on his knees. He presses the heels of his palms to his prickling eyes.
Sorry, I hate this,
he whispers.
Keith,
Shiro sighs. He wraps an arm around Keith's shoulders, dragging Keith to his side. It's just a little bit awkward. They're too far apart, and Shiro has to hastily scoot over so Keith doesn't fall onto the stairs. There was a time when Keith's dad used to do the same. Every night Keith woke up dreaming of, "Why are you doing this to me?" He'd run to the room across the hall and into his dad's arms. The first few times were just like this, clumsy and floundering, and with Shiro it's almost the same. The thought just makes his eyes sting harder behind his hands.
I'm sorry,
Shiro says suddenly. It's so out of place that Keith doesn't register the apology for a few seconds. He raises his head, hands falling from his face.
What for?
He asks. His throat burns. Shiro takes a deep breath. Lets it out.
It's a pretty heavy mark. I'm just sorry that you had to deal with that at all. It must have been hard.
He squeezes Keith's arm.
But the thing is that I know you,
Shiro continues,
and I know you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't kill your soulmate.
He sounds so sure, voice as firm as when he makes snap decisions in a battle.
So you should really try to stop thinking like that, okay? Because you mean well. You've got a good heart. You're a dependable teammate, a good friend, a paladin of Voltron, and you're Keith.
Shiro smiles.
I trust you with my life, and every time we go out into battle, you know the others think the same. So you should trust yourself more.
And somehow, just like that, Keith can feel himself letting go, crumbling with relief. And he takes those words to hold against the burning anger, fear, hate, sorrow, fear, like a balm. Even if he is a soulmate killer, it's nice to know someone has so much confidence in him.
How can you be so sure?
He asks.
What if I change? What if this war is what does it? You said it yourself, my temper got us in trouble.
Shiro just huffs wry.
You know, I said that to try and snap you out of your robot impersonation. I never meant any of it. I did think you were acting kind of funny.
Keith bites his lip.
Thanks, Takashi. Thanks.
Anytime. Shiro regards Keith with a steady gaze.
Your mark doesn't define you, Keith. I mean, it does look really, really, really bad. Wow, thanks, Shiro. But you don't have the full story. You won't know for sure how it'll go. It's best to just focus on what you can do here and now, and let the future worry for itself. Keith finishes with a roll of his eyes. Yeah, I know.
Shiro blinks, laughs, and ruffles Keith's hair.
You're a good kid, you know that? You've really grown a lot since the garrison. I keep forgetting to mention. I just turned 19, Shiro. I'm not a kid. Sure, Shiro dolls. And I didn't catch you barefoot in the lounge room fighting with Lance over who was taller. The memory floats up in Keith's mind. The deep embarrassment he felt when Shiro walked in and found them back-to-back trying to get on their toes without the other noticing. He remembers looking over to find Lance with the same reddened cheeks and hunched shoulders. Remembers thinking that that sight alone was worth Shiro bent at the waist, laughing himself to tears, with a finger pointed at them. A tremulous smile slides across his face lightning quick. It falters just as fast. He bites down on his lip, breathing noisily. He was supposed to be safe, he whispers. There's a vice around his throat. His words come out strangled. Shiro squeezes his arm, gentle. We're fighting a war. Keith shakes his head. No, not like that. I mean, he was supposed to be safe. Be Lance, and not like my... I care about him, but it wasn't supposed to... I didn't think it would get like this. I didn't think it'd hurt so much. He almost died, trying to protect me. He laughs quietly, disbelievingly, a shaky, wet sort of sound. They had their guns on me, and he just shoved me out of the way, and all I could think about was how the hell was I going to survive killing my soulmate when seeing Lance die for me feels this horrible. You did sound very frightened over comms, Shiro says. I'm sorry we didn't realize earlier. Cabran said it was odd to have a door in the middle of things, but he didn't have enough information on the natives to know if it would be taboo to decline. Keith lets his head fall onto Shiro's shoulder. He sighs and scrubs the end over his eyes. It's fine. You couldn't have known that would happen. I didn't, and I was listening to an extremely biased history lesson the entire time. Yeah, but it was a tour. I could have just easily asked to postpone something that trivial. And it's like you said, we shouldn't put the whims of other people above our own safety. Quiet fills the room then. They both know Keith isn't going to argue further. He sits there, Shiro's arm around his shoulders, and idly wonders if he should go pick up his knife lying across the room. He's cold, though, and Shiro's always been unnaturally warm. Maybe he'll grab it later, when he goes to reheat his food. And now that he thinks about it, he's actually really hungry. And he'll also need to return the polishing oil to Garan. And thank him for that, and the food. Beside him, Lance's pod lets out a hiss of air and whirs as it sucks in fresh oxygen. Lance knew. Keith finds himself saying. Lance knew there was something wrong. He was weirdly silent the entire time. I think he tried hinting it to me at one point, but I didn't catch it. I should have. He'll probably call me an idiot when he comes out of there. You're probably right. He would absolutely call you an idiot, Shiro says, slowly, and before Keith can react, continues, for not taking care of yourself. Keith blinks. Shiro nods decisively. He'd get all frowny and loud, and he'd try to fix those bags under your eyes by racing you to see who could get more rest than the other, or however kids fix their problems nowadays, and he'd call you dumb 1,000,000 times in between. Keith opens his mouth, affronted by the truth of that, but Shiro gives him no time. He heaves them up with hardly an afterthought, his arm no longer a comfort to Keith, but instead a noose around his neck. He marches them to the door, dragging Keith behind by the neck. Keith chokes under those ridiculously large muscles, hissing and scratching uselessly at Shiro's stupid robot arm. He's suffocating. This is how he dies. Lance would make fun of you for days, Shiro continues with a grave expression. We can't have that, no. As your assigned mentor, Commander Iverson... Keith makes a furious gurgling noise. You are not funny, Shiro. Made you my responsibility, which is why we should get you something to eat, and then you're going to shower and brush your teeth and get into some clean clothes for once, and then you'll sleep until I tell you it's okay to wake up. Shiro smiles the fakest smile that's ever smiled. That way, Lance can't make fun of you. Why would I even care about that? Oh, come on, I know how important your rivalry is to you. Can we at least get my knife? Keith wheezes. No one's going to take your dumb malaria knife, don't worry. I'm telling Goldovan you said that. Go ahead. He's an alien. I bet he doesn't even know what malaria is.
True to Gran's prediction, 12 hours later, Lance wakes.
Shiro doesn't say anything when Keith hugs Lance just a little longer than everyone else. Doesn't even smirk when Keith hides behind him to hastily scrub a hand over his eyes. He just gives Keith a surreptitious pat on the back and starts herding them all to the dining room for lunch. Hunk's prepped some of your favorites, he tells Lance. Hunk shrugs and readjusts the arm he's wrapped around Lance's shoulders to help him walk. After everything, it seemed like you deserved it. Aw, thanks, buddy. Lance gives Hunk a warm smile. Hey, talking about that everything, what's the situation like now? The team gives a collective twitch. Lagging at the back of the group, Keith notes with attached amusement that despite their best efforts to not look at him, the elephant in the room might as well be tap dancing in a neon green jumpsuit. Silently, he shuffles as far away from Lance as he can and ends up huddling behind Karan. Well, Lance looks from one person to the next. Don't keep me out of the loop, guys. What happened after I heroically sacrificed my body for Keith? Keith twitches. And Laura makes a suspicious coughing noise.
Maybe we should revisit that topic another time. For now, we have arrived at the dining room. Let's get you seated, Lance. You must be tired.
Wait, Lance protests as Hunk and Allura strong-arm him into a chair, pushing plates of food closer to him. The team settles around him, leaning on the table or against Lance's chair, and Keith's suddenly hit with an overwhelming sense of deja vu. He glances around the room, then down at himself. Huh, he's even sitting in the same spot. Keith, buddy, surely you can tell me what happens. Lance turns to him and nearly gets poked in the eye with the fork Hunk's trying to feed him with. Hunk, would you? Dude, not that I don't appreciate it, but I can feed myself. Sorry. Lance gives Keith a significant look. Says Keith intelligently. You know what? I'd rather not. What do you mean you'd rather not? More like he can't. Hunk says slyly, and Lance turns to him, eyebrows raised. Keith furiously slashes a hand across his throat and Hunk behind Lance's back. Hunk locks eyes with him and grins. He freaked out after you went down, and I mean like freaked out. And afterwards, Shiro was all, bro, you're a little too affected. And Keith had to sit out on the follow-up mission. He stayed in the castle with Karan while we cleaned up after him, so if you want a first-hand report, you aren't going to get it from him. Keith rubs both of his hands over his face and refuses to acknowledge the barely repressed snickers around him. Lance laughs. Keith? Sit out on a mission? Nice one, Hunk! The team stops giggling, and an awkward silence descends. Keith presses his lips together, crosses his arms, and tips his head back to glare at the ceiling. The silence draws Lance's attention, and he looks around, laughter petering out. He turns to stare at Keith with wide eyes. No way! He whispers. Keith just slouches in on himself, more shoulders drawn up to his ears. No way! Lance says. Oh my god! You sat out?! Keith sends Hunk a look full of betrayal. Thanks, Hunk. Hunk smiles. Yeah, no problem. Did you seriously freak out so bad that Shiro had to bench you? Lance asks incredulous. It was a stressful situation, okay? Keith throws his hands out. I was stressed. What did did you do? Lance demands. He lunges forward in his seat and grips Keith by the shoulder, shaking him. Keith, what did you do? Did you stab them? Don't tell me you stabbed the engines, Red! Keith splutters. I didn't stab them, Lance. Come on. Lance stares at him. Somewhere to the left of Keith, there's the sound of someone wheezing. Shut up, Shiro! Keith valiantly tries to hold Lance's gaze. He lasts all of 2 seconds. Look, I just gently threatened them. He admits pitifully. You threatened them? Gently. Right, because that makes it so much better. Lance throws his hands in the air. His fork goes flying, clattering to the floor. Keith wishes it had hit him on the head and put him into a coma so he doesn't have to be a part of this conversation anymore. How the heck did we get them to join if you were gently waving your sword at them? Lance rages. We didn't, says Paige, sitting in her seat with her chin in her hands. She sounds almost gleeful. Alora and Karam must have spent days doing damage control. Wait! Lance drops his arms onto the table with a thump. What did you say? Keith pointedly turns his back on all of them and starts picking at the dry skin of his bare arm. Unfortunately, Alora begins, and she's definitely hiding a smile behind that hand. And didn't sign on with us. Not that it was Keith's fault, Karan interjects, and apparently he's the only one Keith can freaking trust around here. The council's understanding of his reaction to the incident. In fact, they were rather remorseful. We received numerous apologies from them, from gifts to speeches to formal handwritten notices. Those letters were lengthy, I'll tell you that. Took me a while to sort through them all and send back responses. We were even invited to attend the insurgents' sentencing. Paige swings her feet. The justice process was really something. It involved a lot of cattle for some reason. Wait, so why didn't they want to join the coalition if Keith being Keith didn't offend them? Lance asks. Hey, Keith objects. You shush! Lance raises a finger at him, not even sparing him a glance. Shiro claps a hand to his mouth, shoulders shaking. He falls into the chair nearest to where Keith is sitting on the table edge. Keith kicks him in the shin, but Shiro just puts his head in his arms, still laughing silently. Keith flicks his arm's dead skin cells onto Shiro's hair instead. Serves him right. Alora clears her throat, cheeks pink with mirth. And Shaw was never high on the recruitment list, being so far from the fighting and having surprisingly no Gora interactions in the last century or so. This was a scouting mission because we could always use more helping hands, but... well, she shrugs. The incident made it clear they still had major internal fighting, and after I held a meeting with the coalition leaders, Endchar was deemed too fractured to invest in the war. Lance blinks. He looks down at the table. Oh, so they didn't reject us because of that whole mess that I made. I mean, what happened? The entire team stops, startled, but it's Keith who frowns, pausing in his arm scratching to say, Are you an idiot? None of that was your fault. Who are you calling an idiot, you idiot? Lance snaps, the strange look on his face replaced with annoyance. Keith relaxes at the sight, even as he cocks his head and says, Figures you can literally get stabbed and still somehow find a way to blame yourself. Lance flushes. What Keith is trying to say, Shiro says diplomatically, hands raised, is that there's no reason for you to... He pauses. Actually, no, you know what? That's fucking ridiculous, Lance. She stabbed you. Why would you even think the fallout was any of your doing? That's... Lance splutters. You said fuck! Shiro arches an eyebrow. That's what you're focusing on? Paige huffs a laugh. Lance was always like this at the garrison, too. Every time Hank and I got into trouble, he'd try to take all the credit. Didn't matter how many times we told him no one was going to believe he was the one messing around with garrison tech for fun. Keith snorts. Sounds like him. What's that supposed to mean? Lance narrows his eyes. You want to go, Red? Dunno. Keith casts a critical look at the slight tremor in Lance's hands. He smirks when Lance hastily shoves them under his arms. You're so weak from the pod. Don't want you ending up in there again so soon. Before Lance can let loose whatever retort he's got building on his tongue, Hump jumps him with, "Yeah, he really doesn't." Keith immediately feels attacked. Hump don't. And I mean really doesn't. Cause man, you should have seen him down there. By the time we got to the scene, he was covered in your blood, which I never want to witness again. I like everyone's blood inside their bodies, thanks. And he was cradling you, again, in one arm and had like 3 insurgents on their knees before him. Not sure how he managed that with only a single sword against 3 guns. Also, I think he might have been growling. And his eyes were suspiciously yellow. For the last time, Keith says loudly, nails digging into his irritated elbow. I do not have a magic Gara transformation, okay? This is not one of Shiro's anime shows. Sure does feel like one sometimes, Shiro mutters. Robot cats. Wow! I remember none of that happening, says Lance. What a surprise. Keith says, what a fucking surprise. But thanks, friend. Lance continues, looking straight at Keith with an honest-to-God, sincere little grin. It's nice to know you care. I would die 1,000 deaths for you. Keith's brain screams! Oh, whatever, is what Keith goes with. And in an attempt to make Lance stop freaking looking at him like that, says, hey, by the way, my arm feels like it's about to shed all of its skin like a snake. Do you have more of that cream, Karan? The rash is still being a bother? Karan clicks his tongue. There might be a few more containers lying around in the infirmary somewhere. Lance takes one look at Keith's arm and goes a little green. Great! I just lost my appetite! Nuh-uh, says Hunk. No way. I spent all morning cooking this, and you haven't even touched it. That hurts, Lance. You will eat the food I so lovingly prepared, or I will stuff it down your throat for you. He smiles. It's anything but pleasant. Lance fails. Karan, Allura, Pidge, Shiro, and Keith take one synchronized step back. Right, we're just gonna... Shiro jerks his thumb at the door. Karan, we'll help you and Keith find the cream. You need help, right? Pidge asks, pushing Keith forward. Absolutely, the more the merrier. Karan's already out the door, halfway down the corridor, and practically sprinting. Lance's mouth drops open. What? Where are all of you going? Lance, says Hunk. I don't know how, but this is all your fault, Keith! Lance struggles against the grip Hunk's got on his shoulder. Have fun, Lance, Keith calls out, cheerfully waving. The door closes on Lance yelling, Sleep with one eye open, Red! Lance woke up. Things should have gotten better. They should have. Right? Keith hums, drowsy and loose-limbed, arms crossed behind his head. The sunlight bathes his body in warmth, and a gentle breeze picks up, rustling the grass. Red! Yeah? Keith yawns. You need something, Lance? No, Keith, it's Red! Keith turns his head at the urgent tone, blinking away sleep. Lance is sitting beside him on this wide, grassy plain. He's wearing a black t-shirt. It's Keith. He points to it, to his own chest, a frown on his face. It's Red! No, that's black. Keith says, Why are you wearing my clothes? Lance ignores his question. You don't see it? See what? Keith asks, getting up to his elbows. The grass is cool on his skin. He peers closer, but the shirt remains a plain black shirt. The wind kicks up, and Lance's hair flutters in the breeze. The shirt doesn't. It looks stuck to Lance's stomach and chest, like it's weighted down. What, like laundry, or maybe something slick blooms in the middle of it. It's red. Keith drags his gaze up to find Lance staring back. Lance? He whispers. You can't see stains on black, right? Lance turns his head. Like mustard? Like ketchup? Keith feels panic wrap its hands around his throat. What? And without conscious thought, he finds himself reaching out. His palm presses onto the shirt.
His shirt, Lance's shirt, the black shirt, this reddening shirt. And he nearly screams. It's warm. Not like a body is warm, but warm like wet. Like wrong. His hand comes away bloody. He's struggling to breathe.
What's happening?
He croaks. Keith, says Lance. He's not frowning anymore, expression neutral. Almost serene. He puts a hand on Keith's shoulder, pulling him close. And then he opens his mouth and screams. Stop! Why are you doing this to me? Stop it! Stop it! Stop! The world shatters. The grass shrieks with Lance. The air reverberates with his words like the molecules are plugged into his voice, amplifying, bouncing, rebounding around them, and Keith's eardrums feel like they're about to burst. The ground rumbles, shakes like it's about to explode. The sun flares bright. Once, twice, 3 times. It's blinding, and Keith almost doesn't see it when his hand shoots forward back onto Lance's chest. No, into his chest. And Keith feels flesh and bone give way under the force of his fingers, and Lance is still screaming. Keith is screaming. Stop, stop, stop this. He rips his hand out and blood gushes out of the scorched, gaping hole in Lance's chest. The engine did that. No, Keith did that. It drips down Keith's elbow and there's something in his hand. There's something in his hand. It's red, 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 beating red, and Keith feels dead, feels empty, and Lance reaches for his face and digs his nails into Keith's left eye, and he grins and says, Sleep with one eye open. Red. He wakes up, legs tangled in his sheets. His face is wet. He puts a hand to his chest. His eye. In the morning, Shiro finds him asleep outside Lance's door.